Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yenda malodi donko lankadiro. Oya mungenya, oya mungenya.
If you're not allowed to learn your language, do you become afraid to speak out? Do you lose your voice? Lose your identity? This almost happened to the Tonga people in Zimbabwe, which used to be Rhodesia in southern Africa. The Tonga people are struggling to keep their language, their voice, their identity, and their sacred connection to the great Zambezi River, which flows through Zimbabwe. The Valley Tonga, the people of the great river, lived traditional lives along the banks of the Zambezi River. But then, in 1957, the river valley was flooded to make way for a dam. This separated families, flooded farms and ancestral burial grounds, and changed the rich lives they had along the river. "30 years ago, the Tonga elders shared their stories in a book called The People of the Great River. Sadly, nearly all those people removed from the river are dead now, but the book preserves their memories and rich culture."
Vatonga refers to the people. I am Tonga. So Vatonga represents who we are as a people, a collective group of people that are found both in Zimbabwe and Zambia, predominantly in the areas around the Zambezi Valley. Previously, the Tonga people had this rich, intimate relationship with the river. Our livelihoods depended on the river. Our cultural practices were based on how we related with the river, for example. People were able to fish in the river, were able to grow crops all year round, so there was no hunger, and also there was really no lack of water.
People actually make use of the environment to determine their culture. So to the Tonga people, because they are known for living around water bodies, their culture is also rich around water-related issues. They've come to devise many ways of making use of water, and whatever also lives in water. It's something that they cherish in their lives and in their culture.
So what did they do to try to keep their voice, culture, and their language, which is Chitonga?
Chitonga is the language that we speak. So it's the language that embodies our culture, our history, our identity, and a way of life.
My mother language is my identity. So if I speak in my mother language, I'm speaking as a Tonga person. And even my thinking is original in my mother language. I don't need to sort of first interpret my thinking in another language and express it out.
The displacement of the Tonga people from the Zambezi River to make way for Kariba Dam meant no access to water. It shattered their link to their neighbours and relatives on the other side of the river. The Tonga elders said, "Our children cannot speak to their grandparents. We dream in our own language, and we pray in our own language. Our children will need to learn their own language in school."
People were displaced to different areas, people trying to assimilate or to find a new identity in the areas that they went to. For example, the ones that are in Nyaminyami will now try to fit in and speak Shona, so they lose that Tonga language that they spoke when they were still living with their communities. Like, this displacement speaks to how maybe some people now identify, because you have some people going into some of these areas being isolated not finding community in people that speak the language, in people that practice the same cultural norms and traditions. The displacement not only affected a way of life, a livelihood, a community that was united and did things the Tonga way, but it also started eroding the language.
If people lose their voice, there are chances that they also lose their identity. Why? Because when you lose your identity, when you lose your voice, you will be sort of discriminated and marginalized. The people who are marginalized, they tend to forego or to lose a lot of aspects about themselves. The system that marginalizes people actually imposes certain values and variables on the marginalized. And because they are marginalized, they are not able to express themselves well. That's how then they lose their voice.
Avole manzi, alavola kuli mwinde. Come water, come to us through our ancestor Mwinde.
Together, Mike Tremmell and the Tonga elders wrote the book, The People of the Great River. Mike lived among the Tonga in Binga in Zimbabwe and learned their language. It was then he heard their stories of what had happened years before, the flooding of the Zambezi Valley and how they had to move.
After I lived with the Tonga people for 8 years, it was time to return to the United States. So I was really looking for a way to say goodbye. I decided that it would be better to bring everyone together for collective sharing. With the assistance of many of the Tonga youth and Tonga leaders, I was able to gather about 17 Tonga elder people, or River Tonga. We gathered them in one place and broke them up into small groups and asked each of them questions about their life when they lived along the Zambezi River, what it was like when they heard about that they were going to be forcibly removed, and the actual displacement, what happened to them. Actually, there were some poems and songs that were shared, and it was so much fun because as they were sharing the songs and memories, everyone would at times just break out in dancing and singing and drumming, and it became more like a celebration than anything. I wasn't the only author. I didn't want to write the book as an outsider and talk about the Tonga people. I really wanted it to be their book. The challenge for me was to engage as many of the Tonga elders as I could. And in fact, the Tonga elders, they're the real authors of the book, not me.
Basilwezi means people of the great river. So impressed by the stories, traditions, and memories shared in the book, the youth came together and set up a non-profit organization called Basilwezi Trust. It aims to respond to the needs of the Tonga people and save their identity and language.
We thought it was important to get that book translated. It was like a dream that one day some Tonga children should be able to read and get the story for themselves. So the main issue was that that message, which was in the book, should reach out to the young generation so that they can hear what experiences the older generation went through and the burden which lies on their shoulders as young generation, so that they can also take development into their own hands.
we need to make sure that Tonga is taught in the schools. And then for our young men and women who are producing books, we need to continue encouraging them to produce more books so that there will be a lot of material to be read. The more material that is made available, the more the people who understand will continue to understand our culture. Usually language is lost because there's no material to read. We went to school during that time when Tonga language was actually shunned. So it is against that type of attitude that we're getting from our colleagues to say, Tonga is not one of those languages, and we should not take pride in it. And then we say to ourselves, if we're born in Tonga, what is going to change us? We need to maintain our culture. But we struggled, and there we are right now. That struggle is bearing fruits. So what really motivated us to join this struggle is the need for our culture, the need for our language to be heard and also to be counted, to say it is one of the languages. And there we are now. Tonga in the Constitution of Zimbabwe is one of the 16 official languages. There we are now. Tonga is being taught up to university level.
The consciousness level is very high. People are conscious of their situation. They know the story. They know why they've been lagging behind the development. It was because of disruption in their traditional life, in their way of life, after the construction of Lake Kariba. That has been communicated. It is their responsibility to work around these issues.
Chief Sinakatenge emphasized that Tonga chiefs and other traditional leaders are vigilant custodians of Tonga culture. Basalwezi Trust has been a great ally in supporting this. The chief spoke about their successes after years of advocating for the teaching of their language in schools, opening the Basalwezi publishing desk to produce Tonga textbooks and so recognize their language rights. The Tonga Literacy Project has helped with funds to get books by Tonga authors printed. In the words of Chief Sinakatenge, we did a good job, but there is more work ahead of us. Despite all the hardships, the Tonga people have endured and have a chance to grow and flourish. They fought to preserve their past, not only for themselves, but for future generations.